I modded Pokemon Emeralds that you play through the entire game backwards, and then I set out to Nuzlocke it, with only shiny Pokemon. This immediately started with the hardest hunt of this challenge, the hunt for a shiny starter. I made this easier by increasing the shiny odds to roughly 1 out of 1000 and making it so you can see if a starter will be shiny in the selection screen, but this still ended up going on for quite a while. Once I passed the shiny odds, I began speeding up the game and more and more and more until finally, after nearly 3000 starters seen. The C is not the only part that's flipped actually. Oh, yes, let's go! Let's go! I am not stupid. It works. Let's go! With a shiny Swampert in my party, I entered the Hall of Fame, where I had access to a PC filled with all fully evolved Pokemon from Hoenn, ready to be shiny hunted. To do this, I just had to press a nifty button over here, hack into the PC, and voila! I used this function to reroll the shininess of all Pokemon in the PC to eventually get a full team of shinies consisting of Illumise, Tentacruel, Hariyama, Azumarill, and Raichu. It wasn't the best Elite Four team I've ever used, but at least I had access to a mover learner and all TMs, so I could still make sure I was well prepared for the first opponent of the game, Champion Wallace. Raichu easily one-shot his lead Wailord with a super effective magnet boosted Thunderbolt, so the Hoenn champion thought it was a good idea to send out Gyarados next. One quad effective electric move later and Wallace was already down to 4 Pokemon, but he did start using his brain and brought in the ground type Whiscash third. However, after I swapped in Illumise, Wallace already forgot what he was doing, so Whiscash did the same and used Amnesia to boost his special defense, and with Encore I could force him to keep using the same move while I slowly chipped him down with Return. This is probably a good time to mention that yes, my Pokemon are indeed losing experience, which causes a bunch of things such as leveling down, forgetting moves, and devolving. Anyways, Tentacruel was up next, which was no match for my ground type starter, and then my own better looking Tentacruel could finish off both Ludicolo and Milotic with Sludge Bomb, beating Wallace and making me not the champion anymore. Let's move on to Drake. To be completely honest, this fight was a mess. Shelgon and Altaria swiftly went down to Ice Beams from Swampert, but Kingdra didn't have that ice weakness, so after an Earthquake, I tried to take care of it with Azumarill. Despite huge power to double its attack, the damage from its return was pretty sad, but luckily Tentacruel did not disappoint and landed a critical Sludge Bomb, didn't get paralyzed by Body Slam, and finished it off on the next turn. I gave Azumarill a second chance to prove itself against Flygon, going for the kill with a quad effective Ice Beam, and once again Azumarill let me down. This meant I now had to use Swampert, which almost died to a critical Earthquake, and although Flygon did go down to an Ice Beam this time, I still had to deal with Drake's Ace Salamence. Just a reminder, if one of my Pokemon dies, I can't use it anymore, and if my starter dies, I cannot finish the run. Because of that, I of course immediately got it out of danger, bringing in Hariyama instead, since Salamence doesn't actually have any flying moves, but his Dragon Claw still would have killed if it was a critical hit, and 2 returns weren't enough for the knockout. Luckily, I still had Raichu as my one fully healthy Pokemon in the back, which could safely tank one hit on the switch, and then finish the fight with a Thunderbolt. Next up was Glacia, who on paper might seem easy because of my Hariyama and Raichu, and their first 4 Pokemon were indeed not much of an issue, but then there was Walrein. Because I was using special candies to get my Pokemon down to the level of the next opponent, all my Pokemon were the same level as Walrein, which means that if it used Sheer Cold, there was a 30% chance that my Pokemon just died. Raichu would already die to a regular hit, so I switched it out for Tentacruel, and Walrein immediately used Sheer Cold, and missed. After we inflicted each other with status conditions, Walrein used Sheer Cold a second time, and missed again, after which Sludge Bomb and the poison damage were enough for the knockout. Moving on to Phoebe, the only super effective move I had for her ghost types was Shadow Ball on Illumise. This was just barely enough to take care of the first Dusclops, but luckily the neutral hits from my other Pokemon also did quite some damage. Torrent boosted Surf from Swampert 2-shot the stronger Dusclops, Azumarill's Ice Beam actually got a kill for once, Bayonet number 2 was no match for Raichu's Thunderbolt, and Sableye Double Team didn't stop Tentacruel's Surf from connecting, so that was already the entire Phoebe fight. Last up was Sidney, and I decided to have a bit of fun with this fight. You might think enemies can't do much based on that last fight, but let me introduce you to the Bug Punch strat. We encore the opponent into a status move, we focus, we don't get hit, so we punch, and then we're sad because we didn't punch hard enough. So yes, I had to swap out and let my Yana take itself down with double edge, but then I could switch back into Ilamise on a swagger to boost its attack, so we encore, focus, and punch. I did this successfully one more time against Cacturn to get Ilamise's skill count here to basically 3, so I cleaned up Sidney with my other Pokemon, finishing the Pokemon League and giving me access to the entire Hoenn region. Although I could just fly everywhere, I decided to still go backwards through Victory Road, which was more confusing than challenging, and even the Wally fight at the end wasn't an issue. That was already all there was to do between the League and the 8th gym, so let's take on 1. Love Disc was no issue at all for Raiju's Thunderbolt, and second up was a Wish Cache, which used Amnesia. So I used Encore, and then it was time to Bug Punch, Bug Punch, Bug Punch, Bug Punch, Bug Punch, and dead. Although both of one's next two Pokemon were weak to fighting, they were also weak to grass, so I just used Giga Drain to take those down instead, and then only Kingdra remained. It may have started using Double Team to make it harder to hit, but Final Throw from Hariyama never misses, so we'll be fine. That's not a lot of damage, but we'll just trade some hits for a bit. At least I still have my Sharpshooter Tentacruel, which once again landed a critical hit. Easily took an Ice Beam. This is bad. I threw my entire team at this demon, but 7 minutes later, all my Pokemon were in very rough shape and Kingdra was still doing totally fine because of rest. At this point, there was nothing I could do. Azumarill got a defense drop with Rock Smash, but that was the last thing it ever did because I had to sacrifice it on the next turn, and although I tried to capitalize on that drop with Raichu's return, the 6 double teams were too much to hit through, so that was death number 2. Next up on the chopping block was Hariyama, which couldn't land a hit either, but then Kingdra used Rest. This meant that it had used up all of its attacking moves, so I could safely switch into Ilamise, heal back up just to be sure, encore Kingdra into double team, and finally Bug Punch my way to victory. Now that I had lost the 8th badge, a couple Pokemon got deleted from the PC, but that still left enough Pokemon to shiny hunt, because instead of getting the first Pokemon on each route, I decided that I would allow myself to get one additional team member after every gym. So while everyone in Sootopolis was freaking out about some legendaries, I was just rerolling for a shiny until after almost exactly the odds, I got a shiny Huntail. But before I could use this in the next gym, I did actually have to fix whatever was going on with Groudon and Kyogre. I tried to get Rayquaza to do something about it, but he just said, nah, I'm out, so instead I had to go back in time and stop Groudon and Kyogre from getting awakened in the first place. Luckily, going back in time isn't much of an issue here, and the Archie fight in Seafloor Cavern wasn't difficult either. His Dark-type Mightyena stood no chance against my Fighting-type Hariyama, a Super Potion wasn't enough to stop Swampert's Ice Beam from knocking out Crobat, and Illumise hit through confusion to land a +6 Focus Punch to annihilate the Sharpedo. The fight against Maxie in the Mossdeep Space Center isn't even worth talking about, so it's time for the Psychic Gym. I was honestly quite worried here, because I had 2 Psychic weak Pokemon and the rest of my team all took neutral damage from it. I had no Dark or Ghost types for the offensive advantage either, but luckily Water types are also quite good for that. Tate and Liza already lead with 1 water weak Pokemon in Claydol, so I used Rain Dance to set up strong surfs to deal with that, and I completely neutralized their other lead Xatu by locking it into a setup move with Encore. From here I could use a combination of Illumise's Giga Drain and Huntail's Surf to take down their Rock and Ground types, leaving only Xatu. Since I could keep this stun locked with Encore, I simply swapped in my physical attacker Hariyama, used Strength twice, and voila, that's the Psychic Gym down. This triggered more Pokemon to be deleted, and this time it was actually an issue. Huntail, who only had been with us for a short while, already got Thanos snapped out of existence. After not too long, I could at least get the team back up to 5 Pokemon again by getting a shiny Weezing, and I love this fully evolved Pokemon, so that's amazing. Because my Pokemon were now getting into the low 30s, some of them started devolving, also including Swampert. That didn't mean my starter was useless though. It still took down Maxie's first Pokemon in the Magma hideout fight and even got close to getting a second kill, but I ended up finishing off Crobat with Fake Out from Hariyama. The level 39 camera up was actually a bit scary with Earthquake, but Coughing actually came into play here because of Levitate, which gives it an immunity to ground moves, and it could then knock out Maxie's final Pokemon with Return. The next thing on the agenda was a 6th gym, and Coughing was actually really useful once again. It can learn a bunch of moves via TM, which I have a lot of, so I used Thunderbolt to take down the lead Swablu, and although Flamethrower did less than half of Tropy's HP, it set up Sunny Day, which boosts fire moves, letting me get the KO on the following turn. Pelipper even got one shot by a Thunderbolt, and the sun was still up when Skarmory came out, so a critical Flamethrower could absolutely obliterate the Steel type. Unfortunately, Coughing didn't get access to any ice moves to deal with Altaria, so I couldn't make this a clean sweep. Instead, I swapped to Marsh Stomp, which 2 turns later dodged the potential of a critical Earthquake, retaliated with a quad effective Ice Beam, and that's the Flying Gym down. Because none of my Pokemon got deleted this time, I could now hunt for a new shiny to get a full team of 6 again. This final team member ended up being a gorgeous shiny Skarmory, and with this defensive wall on my team, I moved on to challenge Norman. His lead Spinda tried to confuse Illumise, but the held Person Berry immediately took care of that, freely letting my Bug punch, and that is 1 down, 3 to go. Against Vigoroth, I swapped into my Skarmory since it resists all it moves, but after chipping them down, I used Illumise to get the kill instead. This was so that when Linoone tried to set up Belly Drum, I could lock it into that move with Encore. Have you noticed yet that Encore is a busted move? Especially when paired with Focus Punch. Norman's last Pokemon was Slacking, and this is the ultimate Focus Punching bag. Okay, I may have been risking critical hits from Facade this entire time, but it's fine. So after one more Focus Punch, the Slacking went down, and that is half of the gyms done. There is nothing to do between gyms 5 and 4, but I did hunt for another shiny, which ended up being Golem. Or Graveler, I guess. This would come in handy against Flannery, but first it was time for my starter to shine. Water Gun, Mudshot, and Water Gun number 2 got 3 consecutive one-shots, and 2 more Water Guns brought Torkoal down to yellow HP before Marshtomp got attracted by that unresistible Torkoal. This is where Graveler came in, holding a Cherry Berry in case Body Slam paralyzed it, so a Magnitude 6 could clean up the fight. At this point I didn't bother with shiny hunting for more Axis team members, both to save time and to keep this somewhat challenging, so I went straight to Mount Chimney where Hariyama got all 3 kills against Maxie. After hitting some more required story beats, I moved on to the Electric Gym where Watson was actually waiting for me, if you know you know, and it was boom time. Because Coughing would get deleted after this gym anyways, I just used it to give Voltorb a taste of its own medicine for the first kill. Electrike easily went down to a single Mudshot, and although Magneton was a bit annoying with confusion, paralysis was at least not an issue, so Hariyama got rid of the Steel type, leaving just Manectric. After getting a defense drop with Rock Smash, I brought in Geodude and blew up once again. I kinda forgot that Geodude would not get deleted here since you can also catch it in Granite Cave, but it wouldn't be useful for Brawly anyways, and I beat Watson, so who cares. The rival fight on Route 110 was a bit easier than normal since I still had access to the Game Corner TMs, including Ice Beam before I guessed the Grovyle, so I could move on to Brawly with 4 Pokemon remaining. Bug Punch wasn't doing much punching at this point anymore, but the 90 base power Special Thunderbolt still was more than enough to 1x1 take down Brawly's Machop, Meditite, and Makuhita. However, this victory still came with a cost. After one tragic step, Bug Punch the Illumise was no longer with us. There's no time for grieving though, let's just honor it by punching Roxanne right in the metaphorical face. I did have to level down my Pokemon first, so my starter was now a lovely Mudkip, which could still easily one-shot both of Roxanne's Geodude. Nosepass was a bit bulkier with a lot of healing options, but after mashing A enough times, a final Water Gun took down the Rock type, completing the reverse gym challenge. With that done, Mudkip was my only Pokemon remaining, which was all I needed for the remaining small fights. The Team Aqua Grunt, the first/last rival fight, and finally the tutorial Zigzagoon battle. After some closing dialogue, I jumped into the back of a truck and the credits rolled, meaning that I successfully beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Emerald backwards with only shiny Pokemon. I had a lot of fun with both modding this and then doing a more casual challenge like this without too much overall difficulty. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot if you liked and subscribed. I have a lot of plans for both more crazy modded and unmodded challenges, so stay tuned for that. If you want to play this or any of my other mods, there's a Google Drive link in the description where you can find how to do that. That's it for this video, so I'll see you next time, and of course, stay alive.